Are you ready? Are you ready for the coming social shift that is going to change the landscape of fatherhood forever? That's what we're talking about in this video, and this is actually part 2. So if you didn't already watch part 1, in the description below, you can find the link to part 1 to set up where we are in the conversation as we resume right now. Quick reintroduction. My name is Marcus, also known as Mr. Homemaker, which is a nickname that goes back 4 years ago when I left my 20-year career in national security to focus on my marriage and family life, and spent that time studying, researching, analyzing, and consolidating the lessons learned to provide them to you here in this format. But if you're interested in my origin story, you can go back and find the Mr. Homemaker podcast or YouTube channel. There's links on our website, mr-homemaker.com. But let's reorient on where we were in our conversation. In this discussion, talking about the coming social shift and what it would take for you and I as fathers, as men today, to be ready for it, we talked about first the pendulum that began swinging with the Industrial Revolution 175 years ago, and then was accelerated or doubled down on 75 years ago in the information age. Some of the key takeaways from that portion were that after nearly 10,000 years of unbroken human experience of living in agricultural communities, we, in the Industrial Revolution, uprooted nuclear families, mixed and matched them, consolidated them into urban centers where they lost their support network and their connection to communities that shared their beliefs and values. Then we doubled down on that in the information age 75 years ago, and instead of atomizing nuclear families, we further separated out individuals earlier and earlier in life, so that most of life is an experience of isolation and lack of rootedness, lack of support, which is in large part how we find ourselves in the despairing social situation that we are today. Now, recognizing how that pendulum swung, we can now see how it will begin to swing back, because just as centralization and centralized control of commerce and industry and information and education ramped up over a 100-year period, 75 years ago, they reached their high water mark, and we're now seeing, especially over the past 10, 15 years, once again, the decentralization of information, education, commerce, industry, so that we are no longer constrained, limited, locked into these narrow career paths and lifestyle choices that create artificial scarcity of a race to compete for, work harder, get paid less, pay more for fewer homes in confined areas. But now that we can work for anybody, doing anything from anywhere, and have fewer gatekeepers and fewer barriers to entry, once again, we will be able to make decisions about where to live and how to live that are much less constrained by economics, much less constrained by institutions and external forces, and much more a world of our own choosing, if we are ready to seize that opportunity. So then we talked about the secret to being ready for you and I today, as fathers, as husbands, thinking about what we can do for ourselves, for our current family units, and to prepare them and the next generation to seize this opportunity. That, unfortunately, recognition of the drop in many of these barriers, the reduction in constraints, does not immediately enable us to go back, to avail ourselves of the kind of community and family support networks, the kind of rooted sense of place and belonging and purpose that people took for granted 175 years ago, is now difficult, if not impossible, for many of us to find. It's not just out there for us to take it. We have to rebuild it. And in order to do that, you and I need to overcome our individual limitations, and once again figure out a strategy, a framework for approaching being a father, a husband, a head of a household. Approach that mission once again by tapping into a network of similarly situated men, as well as some men a little bit ahead of us, a little bit behind us, to our left and right, a network of mutual support and mentorship and coaching and accountability. Because through that network, we can accelerate and improve the quality of our OODA loop, of our ability to observe and orient, to make decisions and follow through on them. Particularly those of us who served in the military know that it is far better, far more effective, far more reliable to achieve an outcome when it is part of a system, a network of men who are aligned on a similar vision, a similar outcome, who share a common framework. So that's where we left off. But the next question is, what is the first step toward rebuilding that? What are the necessary conditions to reestablishing first for ourselves that common that network, that common framework, that alignment? And then once we've built it for ourselves, how do we build it for our families and our extended families and our communities? One thing that we didn't explore in detail in part one, but I think you will now see the connection points, is that when people were uprooted as nuclear families in the Industrial Revolution and transplanted into urban and industrial centers, what that meant was they had to abandon their sense of truth, because their long-standing and enduring community beliefs and values, the North Star of their value system, what kept them rooted and provided them with purpose and meaning and established their priorities, that was, once they were transplanted, that was just idiosyncratic to them. And they had a choice between either stubbornly holding on to those and having a lot of friction with their neighbors and co-workers in that melting pot environment, or in order to get along more easily, the fastest path to coexistence is to abandon belief, abandon values, abandon those sort of philosophical and metaphysical principles that they and their ancestors going back 10,000 years would have taken for granted, would have provided them with overarching purpose. But in order to survive in the jungle, the concrete jungle, in order to integrate and get through day to day, the easiest path was abandoning truth. And so what is left when you abandon truth is authority is merely arbitrary. And so that began in the Industrial Revolution and then ramped up through the Information Age, because as we atomized families and husbands and wives have less and less time together, parents have less time with children, children become more and more wards of the state who are brought up and indoctrinated and educated by secular bureaucratic institutions, right? So their value system, their belief system, such as it is, mostly either eschews the existence of truth or denies the existence of truth. That is how they resolve the conflict between competing truth claims, is to deny them all equally. And in that world, in the world that we created in the Industrial and Information Age, the exercise of authority is correctly criticized as being arbitrary, because it's not rooted in or in service to any higher truth. So there were reactions, again, with the benefit of retrospect, there's predictable reactions to this disconnect between truth and authority. One is the individuality-focused reaction, where somewhere on the spectrum of libertarianism and transcendentalism, the individual says, I recognize your authority as arbitrary. I am suspicious of this entire system. I don't want you to impose any burdens or constraints or requirements or duties on me because I reject or am suspicious of it all. I want to be left alone. I want to be a libertarian. And if I don't have my own source of truth that I'm holding on to, then I just become a hedonistic nihilist, right? That's the most extreme form, libertarianism being far more common. The other reaction that is a fallout of the Industrial Revolution is a identity group focused mindset, where if you identify with some group of people, be that an economic class or an ethnic or national class, and you say, wait, all of this exercise of authority is just arbitrary. If anybody can exercise authority for any reason to anybody's benefit or detriment, then I want my group to exercise authority. I want to seize the levers of power for the benefit of my group and to keep other groups down. And so if you think in economic terms, that makes you a Marxist. And if you think in national identity terms, that makes you a fascist. So both of those, first there's the individual leg, and then there's the community or collective oriented leg. Excuse me. So those are both reactions to the unintended fallout of the Industrial Revolution, where we disconnected the exercise of authority from the concept of truth, of a higher authority, of a greater purpose. Now, people who have bad tastes in their mouth with regard to Marxism and fascism and libertarianism, but they are unwilling to acknowledge or embrace any source of truth that they can connect to authority, they fall down to what I think, it seems to me, is one of the most common mindsets, worldviews in our society today, which is postmodern relativism. I reject truth, I am suspicious of all authority, and I am ambivalent about, or I have mixed feelings about, either individual autonomy or group identity. I go back and forth between those things, and I basically just want to get through the day, right? I just want everybody to get along. I just want to make things as frictionless as possible. And I think that the best way to do that is through postmodern relativism. So now that we've, having in part one gone through sort of the series of dominoes that fell through the industrial and information age, recognizing the sort of implicit, the hidden effect of how that causes people to disassociate with the truth in any form, or even as a concept, we can now see how we got to where we are today, why our society is predominantly postmodern and relativistic, maybe some nihilism, maybe there's a few utopianists out there with some, pie in the sky ideas about how we're going to reach some perfect society where there's no sense of identity, no group identity, and no authority. And then there's people on the other extreme of the spectrum who, are sovereign citizens and total libertarians who just want to be left alone because they don't trust authority or other people. And all the sheep and yuppies like me in the middle are just swimming in a sea of postmodern relativism. Now, how does this help us figure out what our first step is? Well, the first step, if we want to cultivate flourishing for ourselves, our families, and the next generation, is we need to recognize that the last 75 years have proven what you maybe could have guessed, but again, we have to be humble about the benefit of hindsight. But a world in which we abandon any sense of truth, in which we reject the concept of authority, leads to despair and dysfunction. If we want to have flourishing, what we need to reclaim, rediscover, and cultivate is we need to cultivate a healthy relationship with the truth and with authority, with community and with individualism. We need to have those three things in a healthy proportion, unwinding the damage that was done over the last 175 and especially the last 75 years. That is the only way to reverse the trend as the pendulum of opportunity swings. If we want the pendulum of adverse demographic changes and adverse personal and community outcomes and negative health and mental health and social well-being, as all those things are reaching record lows, right? Those ailments are reaching their most severe point. If we want to reverse those trends, just as we see the opportunity reverse, a greater opportunity that was constrained is now being opened up again, it will not follow automatically unless we deliberately take steps to cultivate a sense of truth and a healthy relationship with authority. Now, that is why in the Fit for Fatherhood community, in addition to prioritizing the onboarding and integration of veteran fathers, another key priority, or another filtering element, is, I'm putting it on the screen here, is the Fit for Fatherhood creed. And the key, the essence of the Fit for Fatherhood creed is, after having done through that, sociology, history, political science lens, done the study of how these ideas came to be, how they came to take root, and how they've led to these negative outcomes, is identifying what fundamental beliefs and values would a man have to affirm in order to be, for his worldview, his mindset, to be compatible with human flourishing, with cultivating the kinds of relationships and dynamics between himself and his family and the community, in order to lead to better outcomes for himself, his children, and generations to come. So the Fit for Fatherhood creed was carefully crafted, drafted and revised many times over, to be as precise as possible in order to identify and encapsulate the necessary elements of a person's worldview. Now, there are many different philosophies, religious traditions that a man could be coming from that could be compatible with this creed. So this is not prescriptive in those senses, but it does definitely exclude certain worldviews and ideologies like Marxism, fascism, like extreme forms of libertarian nihilism and hedonism. If those are worldviews that a man is either subscribes to or is that are influential in his life, then he will not be eligible for Fit for Fatherhood. Because in order for this community to be effective, an authentic community, it has to be one where the men in it have shared beliefs and values. That is an indispensable element of what communities were for 10,000 years, until 175 years ago, is that peer relationships, mentor-mentee relationships, community standards and expectations for behavior were shaped by a common set of beliefs and values. And so this is the Fit for Fatherhood solution to what are our core beliefs and values that serve as a foundation, underpin everything we're doing, so that we know in our community, which you cannot otherwise find in public forums or sort of surface level communities online, where they take all who apply without having these kinds of worldview filters, is that you can't get reliable advice as you're trying to accelerate and improve your OODA loop, better understand the world around you, make better decisions, and get ahead of events, right? Position yourself to seize opportunities. That's not possible when the advice and information you're getting is contaminated with ideologies and worldviews that are toxic to human flourishing, as we just saw in the previous slide. So if right now there's a code on your screen, let me show you how you can use it. If you go to mr-homemaker.com, This will be the landing page. It shows you the calendar of upcoming cohorts that are joining Fit for Fatherhood, when they start, and when their in-person capstone event, right, where you can conduct a Tough Mudder event with your fellow Fit for Fatherhood members, the men who you've gotten to know, you've trained alongside, and who you've been working with through this training progression, not just physically, but also mentally, adaptively, and emotionally, right? So that set of men who you go through your cohort with, we will all meet up, do a Tough Mudder together. That'll be our capstone for that leg of your journey. And then at that point, you can either continue to be a member who participates in the online community, the closed community, even if you do not enter a new cohort, another round of training, and another Tough Mudder event, you'll still have access to the private community servers. But you'll obviously have the option, as this diagram indicates, to go from one cohort, move on to the next cohort, or from one program type up to another. Okay, so you go here and you go to the ground training page, and in the downloadable tool, you just say, I'm not a robot. And this downloadable tool serves two functions. One, it serves as the application for membership in our community. And two, it provides you with a custom tailored, based on your age and your current stats, it provides you with a 6-week training plan. So this is the entry-level training plan that we will use within the community as we train together, right? Hold each other accountable, provide support, mentorship, coaching, and accountability to reclaim our physical fitness, make sure that if we aren't where we need to be, in essence, able to pass a PT test with an average of 70% in an event and meet military height weight standards, then we're going to get there. All right. So you don't have to already be there now to be eligible, but you download this tool, you fill it out, and it will tell you which programs you are eligible for based on your fitness level and your other demographic data. So if you use that code that's scrolling on the bottom of your screen, F4FYT6, then when you follow the personalized link that it will generate for you, you follow that link to the website. There'll be a page that presents you with the programs that you're eligible for. And if you apply for membership and use that code in your membership application, then you will receive 3 enlistment bonuses, 3 pieces of gear. So there's approximately $100 value will be shipped to you by using this code. That applies to the first 12 people who use this code. Will get that benefit. So I hope that you have found this video helpful, and I hope you'll subscribe and join us for more live streams, watch more videos, but more importantly, please go to mr-homemaker.com and submit your application while there are still spaces available and there's still time to get into the next cohort. Okay,